the Communications and Marketing Manager at CFRE International, and I am joined by my colleague Paul Cavazos, who will be on the back end answering your questions and will also be voicing several questions during the question break. He is our fabulous certification manager and a wonderful resource. Before we start, I did just want to say that our view on providing this information is purely informative. This webinar is not meant to be an advertorial. I want to make sure that you have the information that you need to determine if the CFRE is the best avenue for you. So with that in mind, we will go ahead and get started with a poll. And we are asking, do you currently have a fundraising certification or diploma? If you have either of those, let us know, or let us know if you don't.
Great, so you can go ahead and vote right on your screen there. Great. Awesome. Okay, so I think we've got the majority of folks voted now. So I'm going to go ahead and close and share this just so everyone can get a sense of where your colleagues are at today. So Ashley, it looks like 6% yes and 94% no. All
right, excellent. Well, that's great to know because that is very helpful as we go through the webinar, because if you don't have a certification or diploma, obviously the CFRE can have an incredible weight if it's the one certification that you do go for. So we'll start by talking about what is the CFRE. We're the Certified Fundraising Executive Certification, and our main point of differentiation is that we're the only globally recognized accredited certification for fundraising professionals. If your job takes you to New York City, it takes you to Sydney, it takes you to London, the CFRE means the same thing. What we are certifying here is your understanding of fundraising best practices at a global level. We've been on the scene for 40 years, and Canada is actually our biggest market per capita. We have over 1,000 CFREs in Canada. We do have about 5,000 and some in the US, but obviously looking at a per capita, we've got a fabulous recognition in Canada, and we have 7,100 CFREs worldwide. That's very important because that's not a ton of people. When you have the CFRE, you really do stand out as somebody who has gone above and beyond to work towards this certification. And you might be thinking, I've been fundraising for X number of years, I'm very proficient at my job, why would I pursue the CFRE certification? And an important piece here is that we don't know what we don't know. This is a measurement of your fundraising competence, and we have had a number of people say, as I went through the studying process for the CFRE exam, I was really surprised by what I learned that I didn't know. It adds to your credibility. When we have a certification of any kind, it only lends to our credibility, right? Because if you go into a job interview or you talk to a major donor and you say, I'm an awesome fundraiser, what do you have to back that up? What is the proof in the pudding for that, right? Career advancement, I'll talk about this in a few more slides, but if you are looking to move into a higher level role, people love to see this on a CV or resume. People want to know that you've taken the time to invest in yourself and that your learning has not been purely on the job and maybe a couple of mishmash of other things, right? It's a formalized program that you've gone through. Recognition, we all love to be recognized in our field. We all want to stand out in it. And over 93% of our CFREs tell us that they gained a wonderful deal of personal satisfaction by becoming a CFRE. We also hear from people that say, you know what, I would bubble up ideas to my board or my boss, and people would second guess me. And then once I got my CFRE, that stopped. So that can be another thing too, right? Because other people want to know that you have that credibility. That your boss will give you a higher level of respect. We hear that very frequently as well. That major donors and grant makers see CFRE on a business card, and they may not know exactly what the CFRE is, but they will then say, hey, I'm not familiar with what CFRE is. Can you tell me about it? All right. Now, can everybody see my screen here? It looks like maybe.
Wait, I can see your screen, Ashley. Is it not
Okay, great.
transitioning?
Yeah, the audience view was showing as it being stuck, but it looks like people can see it, so that's fabulous. All right, great. Everybody here knows that there's a revolving door on fundraising, and that the average tenure of a fundraiser is somewhere between 2 and 3 years. When people are making hiring decisions, they want to know that you're committed to the profession and that you're not just going to be au revoir after 18 or 24 months. That's a great benefit of being a CFRE. I'm getting a note here that people can't see my screen. Let's see. All right, let's try this again. All right, so in 2019, AFP found that the top reasons why fundraisers leave a job is compensation, and they're looking for greater responsibility. So how do you make a case for both of these to stay happy in your job at your organization? Well, certification is a great way to do that. I checked with Marina about a Canadian stat on this. We couldn't find one, but the direct and indirect costs of replacing a fundraiser for the US data is $127,000. And I'm going to guess that in Canada, it's probably not too far off from that, right? Your employer wants you to stay. They want you to be happy. And in Canada, you have a fabulous compensation bump from the CFRE. This is from the Association of Fundraising Professionals 2019 Benefits and Compensation Report, that CFREs in Canada earn on average about $25,000 a year more than non-CFREs. So I want you to think about the cost of certification, which we'll get into in just a minute down here. That's an investment, right? The cost of certification is $700 US if you're a member of a participating organization. Like I said, we'll get into that. You could pay $700 and do 40 to 80 hours of studying and have that come back to you at possibly up to $25,000 a year in your salary year over year. That is a massive return on investment. Right now, our organizations are very upended. There have been people that have been laid off, made redundant, and those of us working in fundraising may be asked to pinch hit. We may be having to cover for people that are furloughed or no longer with our organization. If you have the CFRE certification, because it takes this holistic view of best practice fundraising, you're going to feel more confident and comfortable to be able to cover roles where maybe you haven't had to work directly in them before. So it's going to give you that body of knowledge and confidence to step up. If you're on the job hunt right now, the CFRE is incredibly valuable. Like I said, in Canada, it's got some of the best awareness. Few fundraising professionals hold a qualification, as we saw from our poll. So if you have this, you are going to be elevated. We hear anecdotally at CFRE fairly regularly that when organizations are hiring, they take all of the applicants who are CFREs and put them in a pile, and all of the applicants who are not CFREs and put them in a pile. And they begin their evaluations on that CFRE pile. And that's where they start with their interviewing. So if you're in a tight job market, this may be the case at an organization where you are applying for a role. Higher level roles equal higher hiring stakes. If you hire a cruddy fundraising coordinator, that's not ideal. If an organization hires a subpar fundraising director, that can be disastrous. Employers want to know what is backing you up, because the stakes are very high, especially in this uncertain donor landscape where we do not know what is going to happen with COVID, and we're not sure what the long-term impact is going to be on grant making and donors. The CFRE also proves that you know more than your swim lane. if you've been really focused, let's say on bequests or maybe events for 10, 15 years, you may not have dipped your toe in the experience of other areas like volunteering, making the ask for a major gift. The CFRE is going to round out your experience and prove that you know more than just your swim lane. More and more, we see that people put CFRE preferred in job listings. So that obviously, if you have the CFRE, is going to make you go to the top of the pile. Why do employers care about people having the CFRE? Well, one, they want you to have the ability to set a good example for the people you manage. If you're a manager or director and you are showing that you are invested in your ongoing learning and working to the highest ethical standards in fundraising, that's a trickle down, right, to the people that you manage. It gives peace of mind to the board and the rest of the team that you know what you're saying, that you know that you can prove what you are discussing because you have studied and you have passed an exam that has said you have mastered these skills and these concepts. Ethics and accountability, I don't think a week, maybe 2 weeks go by, right, where there's not some kind of charity scandal in the news somewhere in North America. And we know that this erodes donor confidence and that it is on the mind of donors, especially if you've got a major donor. They want to know that if they're going to make a significant gift, that it's going to be looked after properly. So with that overview of a bit about how the CFRE can benefit you, I'm going to turn it over to our CFRE ambassador in Toronto, Dane Shumack. Dane, do we have you on the line?
You do indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for having me on as a CFRE ambassador. I'm a proud CFRE ambassador in Toronto and also across Canada. So I wanted to start by talking about a little bit about my CFRE journey. So Ashley spoke a lot about why the CFRE is beneficial to your career and sort of widely applicable. But I wanted to share how it helped me, and maybe that will inspire you a little bit. So importantly, and in the least self-aggrandizing way possible, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am so you can get a picture of why the CFRE was important to me. So the first and I think most important thing is that I'm 27 years old and I started my fundraising career early. A lot of people come to fundraising through the side door or through the back door, or they stumble into it. I was very lucky. That wasn't the case for me. And my very first fundraising related job was while I was actually still in school and finishing up university. So while I'm young, I've got over 7 years of experience as a fundraising manager. So currently I'm working in Toronto at Providence Healthcare doing major and planned giving. And as I said, I'm a proud CFRE and CFRE ambassador, as well as a member of AFP's national and GTA boards. So the benefits of being a CFRE, as a personal anecdote, I am baby Yoda. As a 27-year-old fundraising manager, I found that on the job hunt, I was being looked at for my age. Now, is that something that employers are allowed to do? Not necessarily. Was it something that I found was happening anyways? Absolutely. Because I started my fundraising career so early, employers were often looking at a dichotomy between who I was on paper and who I was as a person. And I have always sort of punched above my weight class. I've always worked really hard for my age. And I found that what really was the difference maker was becoming a CFRE and actually being able to explicitly show in an audited way that I had the knowledge and experience that I said that I did, and that I was also committed to being a full-time fundraiser on a long-term basis. Truly having a CFRE lended legitimacy to me as an emerging career fundraiser. When I applied for a job prior to getting my CFRE, I applied to, let's say, 20 or 30 jobs. If those of you who are it's an incredibly thin job market right now, you're probably sympathizing with that. You're probably sitting there, if you're on the job hunt right now, going, I'm applying to jobs every single day. First of all, keep at it, keep up the good work. But secondly, if you're considering a CFRE, it truly is an investment. Of those 25 or 30 job applications before I was certified, I got interviewed twice, and I was incredibly lucky to get one of those jobs. But when I interviewed for on my next job hunt, I applied for 20 roles and I was interviewed for half of them. I was interviewed 10 times and I was so lucky to land at Providence Healthcare. But it was an incredible difference in how many times I was interviewed. That has nothing to do with my status as an emerging career fundraiser. I think that just simply shows the difference, as Ashley was talking about, of showing up in that CFRE stack versus that non-CFRE stack when it comes to job hunting and your next steps in your career. I also think one of the benefits of being a CFRE, as a person who has a CFRE right now, is that it's forced me to maintain professional excellence and participate in constant learning and professional development. Now, learning and professional development doesn't have to be paying thousands of dollars to attend big fundraising conferences and seminars. You can attend webinars, you can write articles, you can participate in presentations. It's a great way to ensure that you're always up to date. And that's also something that your employer or your future employer is going to know that you're doing, because you're committed to being a certified fundraising executive. And that comes with responsibilities to ensure that you're up to date. Now, I can tell you, it's not this big intimidating task. I attend maybe a webinar every month or two, and I ensure that I'm always up to date on trends and topics. And it's just been so helpful to ensure that my knowledge is up to date, to ensure that I'm committed to being the best fundraiser I can possibly be, on paper and in person. And I think one of the other unseen benefits of being a CFRE is that becoming a member becoming certified as a CFRE also means that you become a member of the CFRE international community, which means that you get to connect with a community of like-minded fundraisers online. You get to network with CFRE ambassadors across the country, and you really get to be a part of all kinds of different groups for CFREs that are both sort of informal, getting to know you, sort of networking with your peers across the country, which is really happening a lot online right now. And also, I can tell you on the CFRE international forums, if I have a fundraising issue that I'm pondering and I post on the CFRE international forum, those 1,000+ CFREs across Canada see that, and they jump on board and help, and we help each other workshop ideas and issues all the way through. It's the most useful thing, and it's just such a great way to network and liaise with people across the country, and it's such an unseen benefit of becoming a CFRE. And so I think I want to sort of, in attempting to be brief, I want to give you a little bit of advice, if I may, as a CFRE and CFRE ambassador. As a CFRE ambassador, I get to talk with all kinds of people like yourselves on a more one-to-one basis about what the CFRE means to me and what it can mean to you. So I like to think I come from a place of a little bit of knowledge. The first thing I think that people worry about when it comes to becoming a CFRE, not just about the exam, but in general, is that they are stressed about it and they think it's a stressful thing. My first advice to you is not to stress. Going online and starting your CFRE application is free. The test, while yes, it is an exam to become a CFRE, it is not a big, scary, horrible thing. It's a test that you can study for. There's so many resources available online. There's all kinds of study groups. And the second that you start stressing and worrying about it is the second that you clamp down, you say, I can't do this, and you never submit your application, or you never talk to your supervisor about how they can help guide you to becoming a CFRE, and then the dream goes by the wayside. Let me tell you right now, if the more you stress, the more that you're likely to do that, and this isn't something that you want to pass up. The other thing, as I said, starting your application is free. So you can start it right after this webinar. You can log into CFRE International, you can sign up for an account, and you can start to file all of your experiences, all of your education and professional development that you have, and all of the amazing projects that you've helped work on at your office or in your past roles, and volunteer experiences, all of these things, and see where you add up. All of those experiences count towards points. And so if you've never been on the CFRE application, the way that you qualify to write the application is by getting the requisite number of points. I won't get into the technicalities because I'll get it wrong, but I guarantee you will surprise yourself. If you've never signed on and logged all of your vast amounts of experience and all the learning that you've done, you'll have no way of knowing where you stack. When I went to apply for my CFRE, I attended a webinar just like this, and just for hoots, I signed on and put in all of my experience. And what do you know? I was just a few points shy, and I blew myself away by going, I can actually qualify for this thing. And what do you know? The very next testing window, I had qualified, and I went and wrote the exam. So start it today, and you can always go back in and update it. The other thing I'll say is don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help from fellow CFREs, CFRE International. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your employer, from colleagues, from friends of yours in the industry who maybe have CFREs, or even friends that you know are good at studying and can help you study. I think that's the most important thing, is being a self-advocate and not being afraid to reach out and say, hey, you know what? I want to do this thing. This is a big journey and I need some support. And I think finally, one of the last things that I'll say is that when it comes down to the exam time, this is what I hear stresses people out most often as a CFRE ambassador, is how do I even begin to study for this exam? Well, the first thing I'll say is that you should study in the way that works best for you. There are a million different ways that is recommended online, or that you may hear from colleagues who have CFREs, that all of the ways in which they study for the CFRE, the things that work best for them for the exam. And that does not mean that those things are going to work best for you. They probably won't. So you need to know what works best for you, what kind of a learner you are, and take advantage of all of those tools, whether that's the practice exam for CFRE that exists online, whether that's reading all kinds of articles, whether that's attending webinars, or whether that's joining CFRE study groups, which, by the way, exist. There are a ton of people also studying for the CFRE exam, and they work best by studying and talking with others. And you can join up with these groups. They're always happy to have more people. Whatever works best for you, make sure that you're doing that, and it's going to help with all of the above, especially the stress part. So those are just a few pieces of advice that if you could walk away from this webinar with something to take away, I would love for you to take away one of these 4 things.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dane, so much for sharing your experience. We appreciate that greatly, and it's always wonderful to have the perspective of somebody who's gone through it. Now we'll discuss, how do you start your application? Well, it's free to start. You just hop over to our website. If you look on your screen here, there are 2 places on our homepage. You can click either one, and then that's what's going to get you started. We have several application segments. One, super straightforward, your contact info. We recommend that when you give us your email address, use your personal email address, because if you switch jobs or you suddenly are not at your job, I can guarantee you the last thing that you're thinking about is updating your email address in your CFRE account. Then we have a section on education, professional practice, which is your time working and fundraising, professional performance, which is the funds that you've raised. And then that's when you're going to select your test window. And I'm going to go into more detail about what test windows are and how they work. And then you'll also agree to abide by the Donor Bill of Rights. So, and then you will pay only when you're ready to submit your application, right? So if it takes you a year to work on this application, you're not going to have to pay anything until you decide that you actually want to submit it. So even if you're maybe contemplating it, you can get started and there's really no risk. The way the education works is that you're going to need 80 points. And people say, okay, well, what's a point? So I'm going to go through that here. We can award you 10 points per bachelor's, master's, JD, or PhD degree, and that can be any year, any major. If you have a French degree, a French master's from 2004, that's 10 points. If you have a computer science degree from 1992, that's 10 points, any year, any major. If you have an associate's degree, it works the same way. You get 5 points for those, any year, any major. And we can combine your degrees up to 40 points max. So if you have 16 PhDs, I'm incredibly impressed, but unfortunately, we can only take up to 40 points. You don't need a degree to become a CFRE. If you have one, great. If you don't have one, that's totally fine. The pathway is absolutely still there for you. The way that the majority of people earn their points is through education sessions. Every hour that you're in a session equals 1 point. You go on a 1-hour fundraising webinar, and again, this education really needs to be fundraising focused. If you go on a 1-hour webinar about breathing exercises to fight insomnia, you know, obviously that's not going to count, right? But you get 1 point per hour that you attend a session. And you get 2 points per hour if you ever present. So if you're at a point in your career where you want to share your expertise and you're on the conference circuit, or you want to present to your local AFP or CAGP chapter, all the better. And we will give you 3 points the first time you present fresh material. We can count up to 36 points for presenting. Obviously, like I said, you don't have to present to be a CFRE, but if you do, it's a great way to bank up those points a bit faster. And we can award up to 10 points for relevant non-fundraising instruction. So that would be something like a leadership course, how to better manage people, maybe an Excel course. We've had people try to submit for chocolate making courses, yoga, that's really outside of the scope of where we can draw a line between how that course is helping you be a better fundraiser. So please just keep that relevant, keep that in mind. And a session needs to be at least 45 minutes to qualify. All right, and everything from education and sessions needs to be within the last 5 years. So as we said, the academic degrees can be any year, any major, but your education needs to be in the last 5 years, and that's because we need to show that your learning is current. You can also earn points for service learning, which is really our term for volunteering, and you can get up to 10 points there. So if you volunteer, we can give you 1 point per year per org that you volunteer with. If you do a beach cleanup one day in July, that's 1 point. If you volunteer 50 weeks out of the year at your local nature preserve, that's 1 point. So there's no minimum or maximum amount of time for your volunteering, but it's 1 point per year per org. And if you serve on a committee or board, we will give you 2 points per year per org. A lot of people ask us if faith-based activities count if you are volunteering with your church, your temple, your mosque, and absolutely, that is qualifying volunteer service. All right, now we'll talk here about what counts for education. People tend to have a lot of questions about this, and the good news is most things that you're thinking of probably count. So all of these we're talking about fundraising topics, right? Or up to the 10 points of non-fundraising education. Webinars count, lunch and learns, conferences, workshops, master classes, panel discussions, roundtables. If you do an academic course that's related to fundraising, a certificate course, and if you ever author articles or books, we also have a way that you can get points for that as well, and that's inside the application. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you are looking at the time, the number of points you're going to put in, people often think, oh, wow, I went to this conference and it went from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I must have 7 points for that day. But we have to subtract out any time that you weren't actually in fundraising instruction. So that's going to be all of your meal breaks, if there's networking time, exhibitor time, the cocktail reception. Unfortunately, we can't give you points for that. And if you missed a session to take a phone call or do work. So usually 1 day at a conference works out for people to be about 5.5 points. That's not hard and fast rule by any means, but just keep that in mind. We also have, you might see logos that say CFRE continuing education points, and those are things that are pre-approved. If you attend something not pre-approved, don't sweat it, and please do not worry about it. Use the agenda from the conference or the master class to figure out the time that you were actually in the instruction portion of it. We always recommend that you save a copy of that agenda. And the same thing with webinars. You can take a screenshot of the first and last slide if you're watching a recorded webinar as your proof of watching it. Or if it's a live webinar you attend like today's, just save your registration, email, or receipt. And somebody's asked what's the total point requirement. So it's 80 points for education, and then I'm going to get into the points requirements for professional practice and professional performance in a moment. So we're at our first question break, and Paul, did we have any questions come in?
Sure. We have a couple questions come in. Great questions so far. Let me start by asking these. So one question that came in was, do you need a certificate in fundraising prior to applying?
No, not at all. You do not have to have any certification in this field before you start with your CFRE. Your CFRE will be a certification, so you don't have to have another certificate.
Great. And in addition to that, a degree is not required either. So even if you don't have a bachelor's, master's, or an associate's degree, you can still apply.
Absolutely.
Our next question is, do I record the funds raised for an annual campaign I worked on in my region under my purview? So basically they're asking how to record funds raised for campaigns that they work on. I know you'll cover that later on, Ashley, but if you wanted to just briefly, or I'm happy to answer that one.
Yeah, you go ahead, Paul.
Sure. So yes, I will say that, and again, Ashley will cover this later on in the webinar, but any funds that you've raised as part of your purview, whether you made the solicitation yourself or it was a result of a team effort, all of those funds can be included on your application towards the performance requirement. One other question that came in, how helpful is the CFRE for someone mid-career as opposed to someone just starting out?
It has the same weight. So I think if you earn it, the earlier you earn it, right? Because as we saw in Canada, there is such a pay scale bump with it that really sets you up for a better salary over the span of your career, right? But I've had people say to me, you know, I'm going to retire in 5 years, but I'm going to get my CFRE because I want to go out at the top of my game. And I want these last 5 years to be as beneficial to me as possible. So from a salary perspective, from a knowledge perspective, so there's not necessarily a wrong time. I mean, if you're going to retire in 6 months, it's probably got limited use to you. But if you intend to be in this field for the next several years, there's not a downside.
Great. Must proof of attendance be submitted?
So you don't have to submit your proof in your application. We do audit 10% of applications, and I don't get too into that in this webinar because all of the information is on our website. But don't worry about that. It's completely random, and if you are selected, Paul will be your friend and guide you through it, and at that point you will need your proof. So that's why we just ask that you hold on to everything. So for instance, this webinar, and just saw this question come in, this webinar is going to count for 1 point in the non-fundraising education section. So everybody today that's here, if you stay on for the full hour, you will earn your first point, or maybe the first of many points. Great.
Here's a great question. Is the certification available in French?
The certification is only offered in English. I do know that AFP Quebec has a study group, and we've had a fabulous gentleman named Daniel who is in Montreal who earned his CFRE recently. And if anybody wants to email me at share@cfre.org, I would be happy to put you in touch with him, and he could tell you a little bit about his experience for studying as a Francophone person.
Awesome. Do related courses through platforms like Udemy or Skillshare count toward your points?
Yeah, Paul, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, they do. So definitely be sure to include those. You know, we're looking for any fundraising related educational content. Of course, you're allowed up to 10 points of non-fundraising education, but I believe both of those have a lot of fundraising education opportunities. So webinars will always be considered a class. So you'd put them in as a class in the application, and you receive 1 point per hour for attendance through any platform, whether it's in person or online education.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask one more question. I recently completed a certificate in fundraising management. Is the CFRE still useful?
I would say yes, because we're going to get into the knowledge domains that the CFRE examines essentially. So you can take a look at how that stacks up versus what was covered in your certificate of management and make that determination. But for most people, it is still incredibly beneficial.
Ashley, I can also share, I actually myself completed a certificate in fundraising management prior to completing my CFRE. And the CFRE absolutely retains its use after the certificate in fundraising management, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's great to hear. And just as a reminder, the CFRE is a worldwide certification. So it doesn't just carry a weight within Canada. It is worldwide and it is globally recognized. So now we get into professional practice, and this is essentially youth fundraising. And I saw we had a question come in about volunteer fundraising. So what we need is paid professional fundraising. So your time in a paid professional fundraising role. Volunteer fundraising, unfortunately, does not count. So the way we track this is that 1 point equals 1 month. Super easy. So you just need to have worked 36 months out of the last 5 years. If you're a consultant, you need to start counting from the date of your first client. So if I start my consultancy in April, but I don't secure my first client until July, I'm going to count my time as starting from July, right? Because my first 3 months might just be getting my website and my business cards and all that. Again, we're looking at the last 5 years. So just like the bulk of education, we're going back to what you've done in the last 5 years. We have people that say, well, you know, I worked from 2000 to 2010 in fundraising, and then I just came back in 2019. What about those 10 years before? And unfortunately, they have expired. They've aged out because we are accredited, and so we have to hold everybody to the same standard of having worked those 36 months in the most recent 5 years. 50% or more of your duties must be fundraising related if you are a full-time employee. If half your time is PR, half your time is marketing, half your time is marketing, half your time is fundraising, that's totally fine. That's not a problem. All right, and if you work half-time, if you work 20 hours a week, then we need 100% of your time to be in fundraising. I see we have a question that's come in about maternity leave. So if you went on more than 2 years of maternity leave during the last 5 years, we would need to see that you've worked 36 months out of the last 5 years. All right, and now we're going to talk about professional performance. This is essentially the funds that you raise, right? This is you performing your job as a fundraiser. We need 55 points here, and this is in US dollars. And the reason it's in US dollars and not Canadian dollars is because we're accredited. We have to have $1 amount worldwide. So whether you're fundraising on the euro, the New Zealand dollar, the Thai baht, it all becomes US dollars. It gets converted to that. And we have a currency calculator in the application. So please do not stress about that. We make it very easy for you. Now, the events, if you are an event fundraiser, you're going to report the gross. And if you're looking at planned gifts, they need to be received or be an irrevocable promise. You can't say, you know, the CEO of BlackBerry called me up and he promised $10 million on the phone. We do need to know that there is that commitment and that it is formalized. Now, we realize that fundraising is a team sport. If your organization sends out a direct mail piece and it brings in $300,000, there's no way to say, well, Jackie brought in 10,000, Yolanda brought in 30,000, Abigail brought in 50,000, right? We're looking at what the team that you're on has raised for the projects that you've been involved with, right? That team fundraising. If you work for a smaller shop, we have the ability that you can earn these points through management or communications projects. It's 5 points per project, and the information's on our website. So if you need more detail on that, I won't get too deep into that because I know we have a lot to go here. The initial certification cost, as I said before, is $700 if you're a member of a participating organization, and the full list is on our website. So please do not ask us through the chat if a certain organization is participating or not. You can find that on our website in the About section. Essentially, you're going to get 20% off. If you're a member of AFP, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Association of Healthcare Philanthropy, National Association of Cancer Center Development Officers, etc. We have 30 participating organizations. So if you're a member of a professional organization, there's a great chance that you can get that discount. But please note, you can't stack a discount. You can't say, okay, well, I get 20% off as an AFP member, and I'm also a Anecdote member, so give me another 20% off. $700 is the lowest rate that we offer. All right. There's only that fee for initial certification. That includes everything. It's fully inclusive. That's going to include Paul reviewing your application, if he finds an error and he has to send that application back to you, you're not going to be charged to resubmit it. You can only submit the application when you meet the full points requirement. So, usually that's pretty clear to people. But let's say you misfiled something or you put too much non-fundraising education somewhere, there's not going to be a cost to you to resubmit that application. If you would like a review of your application before you submit it, so you've met all the points requirements, but you want that added peace of mind, you can email us at succeed@CFRE, and we will be happy to review it and let you know if we see anything. That initial certification cost, that's covering all your testing fees. We give you a digital badge within a week of you becoming a CFRE, and that includes the printing and mailing of your certificate. So again, I mean, it's quite a deal because we've seen the salary benefits that are tied to this. A lot of people have questions about the CFRE exam. We'll dive on in. As I mentioned before, we have test windows, and you're going to select that in your application. We offer the exam, if you look at your screen here, during these 4 test windows, and you'll probably note that we don't offer it in December because that's a pretty hectic time for fundraisers. And how it works with the application deadline is that that's the deadline if you want to sit in that window. So let's say I want to sit for the exam on July 30th. The last date I can get my application in is July 15th to be able to sit in that window. Now, if you want to sit the exam, if you want to write the exam July 16th, don't submit it July 15th, right? We're going to need a couple of business days to review it and give you the information about how to test, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, you have 1 year to sit for the exam after we approve it. So there's heaps of time to study. Please do not worry about not having enough study time. You are only taking 1 exam for the CFRE, but it's just that there are 4 test windows that you have to select from so that you have the flexibility to determine when is the best time for you to write it. Now, if you need to change your window, we have people that get scared and then they just keep wanting to push their window back. There's a US $35 fee to change it. But if it's due to COVID impact, you're unwell, someone in your family's unwell, that's totally fine. We want to work with you on that, so please don't worry about that. All right, now the 6 knowledge domains that we're looking at on the exam are on your screen here. Very important. You're probably eagle-eyed and you've noticed that securing the gift and relationship building make up 49% of this exam. You will absolutely want to devote study time to those areas. And I'm going to show you in the coming slides. So if you can hold your questions about how to study, I'm going to show you in the coming slides how you will determine what you need to study. So we have a test content outline on our website, and it looks like this. This is the breakdown of every knowledge domain. So when we see current and prospective donor research, these are all of the points under it that you should feel confident about answering an exam question on. So it's very thorough, but I just want to say too, we are very transparent about what is on this exam. It's not like you're going to get into the test center and go, oh geez, I didn't know that I needed to know about data gathering techniques, right? It's all laid out right here for you on our website. So if you go to the study aid section of our website, you can take a look at this. And I want to use this example here of a major gift officer and how the knowledge domains in the studying can help shore up your knowledge. If you're a major gift officer, you're probably proficient in securing the gift and relationship building, and you may be doing your own prospecting, or maybe you work someplace where you have a prospect department, but perhaps you haven't had to do much with volunteer involvement. Maybe you're not at a leadership and management role yet in your career, and you haven't really double down on the ethics, accountability, and professionalism. Not to say that you're unethical, but haven't gone through a formalized process for that. So for pretty much any fundraising role, you're not naturally going to be looking at all 6 of these domains in your day-to-day, right? That's why CFREs can command the salary advantage and the other benefits, because you have this well-rounded body of knowledge. So how do you get started studying? We did a survey of people who successfully passed the exam, and if you have 5 or more years of experience, the exam tests at the 5-year level. So if you have 5 or more years of experience, we recommend that you study at least 40 hours. This is very, very doable, right? If you were to do 5 hours a week, you could do that over the course of 8 weeks. If you have fewer than 5 years of experience, you will want to count on studying for at least 80 hours. You will need to determine what you need to study. You know, what one person needs to study is not going to be the same as what another person needs to study, because we're all coming to this with different backgrounds, different abilities, right? So if you talk to a CFRE and they say, oh, geez, you know, I spent like 6 hours studying this one thing, that may not necessarily apply to you. But I'm going to show you here how you can determine what you personally will study. We have a resource reading list on our website. There's 14 books. Don't be scared. Most people just read 1 to 3 to address whatever their knowledge gaps are. If you're like me and you are very frugal in your day-to-day, many people rent, borrow. You can buy them on sale sometimes. You can buy them used. Or some of them even have audiobooks, which is super cool. So oftentimes an audiobook can be cheaper than getting the actual textbook. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that test content outline I showed you a few slides ago, print it, and then highlight anything that you think you could not answer an exam question on or you don't feel confident about. And then you'll see over here on the resource reading list on our website that on this right column, we tell you which knowledge domains each book addresses. So if your areas for improvement are clustered in knowledge domain 2 or 3, you can come over here and you will know exactly the books that will assist you with that. Sometimes employers will purchase these books for their team, so your employer technically would own them, but that way, once you're done with them, if other people on your team want to become a CFRE, they would be made available to them. As Dane mentioned earlier, there are many, many study groups around. You may want to divide and conquer with people in your study group as well. Who buys what books? Let me get my mouse over here. Now, we offer a ton of free resources on our website because we do want this to be as economical as possible for you. So that's where you're going to find the test content outline. We have a study plan template, which is an awesome way to help you break down week by week which you're going to study. We have a tip sheet on how to start your own study group. As Dane mentioned, we have CFRE Central. That's our online community, and you'll get access to that as soon as you create your application. You don't have to have it completed by any means. Just as soon as you finish, just as soon as you start it, you'll be able to get access there, and you can go in there and say, hey, you know, I'm in Halifax, and I'm looking to start a study group. Who else might be interested? There's a candidate handbook. This is the A to Z of everything you could ever want to know about the process. We also give you the glossary for free. That's a PDF, and that's the language of the exam. So if you're concerned about, okay, well, you know what, I'm worried that the terminology we use in my area is maybe not the global terminology, or maybe you've come to Canada from another country and you're concerned, you can take a look at that glossary and you'll know precisely the vocabulary of the exam. There's a very helpful video on our YouTube channel all about the CFRE exam, setting yourself up for success, and I recommend that everybody watch that. It's 1 hour, and if you go on YouTube and you search this, it's going to come straight up. What is the CFRE exam like? It's 200 multiple choice questions. That means the correct answer is looking right at you. There are 4 options per question. When we are anxious, we read quick. Slow yourself down and read every single word in the question and each possible answer before making a selection. It sounds obvious, but people don't always do that. We are looking for the best answer. So you may look at the 4 options and go, gosh, 2 of these look really good, and you get a bit stuck between them. think about what is the most donor-centric answer. What is the best answer between the ones that you narrow it down to? Someone's asked here if the test is free. So the test is included in that $700. When you pay that initial certification fee, that covers the exam. So you're not going to pay a separate fee for the exam. The exam is looking at your is measuring your knowledge of best practices in fundraising. Some questions might ask, what would you do first? As I said before, if you are stuck, ask yourself, what is the most donor-centric answer? And people find that that is a very helpful tool for moving through the exam. Remember that a best practice may be different to what you do. This kind of trips people up sometimes, but we may have a boss who says, we've got to do this because we've done it like this for 22 years. That may not be best practice. So when you're answering, think about not necessarily what your organization does, but what that global best practice is that you've studied. There are no tax or country-specific questions. This is a global exam, so we're not asking you about Singapore gift receipts. It's very fair. It's the same exam no matter where you take it. If you take it in Vancouver or you take it in Miami or you take it in Sydney, it is the same exact exam. As I mentioned, the glossary is the language of the exam, and the exam is written at the 5-year practice level. You're going to have 4 hours to sit for the exam, which is a very adequate amount of time. We get all of the data back from our test center partner, and most people don't go over 3.5 hours. If you keep yourself moving, there's a very good chance that you're going to have the opportunity to go back and check your answers if you would like to. Every question ties back to a point on that test content outline. There's nothing that's going to catch you off guard and you're going to go, oh geez, I had no idea this exam covered this. Excuse me. You can move backwards and forwards in the exam, which is super cool, because if you get stuck on question 30, but question 99 jogs your memory about question 30, you can just go back to it. 500 is a passing score, and it is weighted. We don't get into that on the webinar because the psychometrician aspect of it is very in-depth, but that is entirely on our website. So if you want to know how the scoring is done, pop over there and you will be able to get the full skinny on that. Our pass rate is 80%. Now, that is incredibly in line with professional certifications. If you're familiar with the PMP, the Project Management Professional Certification, that has a pass rate of 62%. So this is very fair. We are not trying to trip you up. We are not trying to scare you. This exam is written truly to test your knowledge of best practices. So we're going to do a sample question. So if you take a look at your screen, this question is not on the exam. When visiting a senior donor in a nursing home, should a family member be present? A, if one is available, include a family member. If not, include staff. B, if the donor is mentally sound, a family member is not required. C, a family member should be present anytime you visit a donor in a nursing home. Or D, if a gift is being discussed or agreed upon, then a family witness or power of attorney must be present. So I'll give you a second to think on that. And the correct answer is D, right? Because you can go visit a donor in a nursing home, and if you're going to just talk about sports or an upcoming holiday, you don't need to have anybody else there. But if you are going to discuss a gift, then you need to. So that gives you a flavor for what the exam is looking at. Now, there are test centers all over Canada. We are currently trying to work on a virtual test option for you. Honestly, if you're not intending to test within the next 6 months, I wouldn't worry about that, because we all know we're in a very fluid situation with COVID. The in-person test centers are throughout Canada. This is just one example for what you would find in Toronto. If you come over to pearsonview.com/CFRE, you can type in your postcode. So please don't ask us to find your nearest test center. This is self-service. You can go over there, type that in, and then it's going to show you all of the test centers near you on a map, as well as this list. So super, super handy. Once you finish your exam, you're going to get that score immediately. You will not see what questions you got right or wrong, and that's to protect the integrity of the exam. We don't want anybody leaking answers to this exam, so we do not show you what you got right or wrong. You will get your confirmation email from us within 1 day, and once you have that confirmation email, you can add CFRE to your business card, your LinkedIn profile, your email signature. You can shout it from the rooftops, text everybody you ever met. That's totally fine, but wait till you get that confirmation email, and that just means that we've gotten your data from Pearsonville, our test center partner there. We mail the certificates monthly out of Virginia in the United States, so as long as COVID isn't tripping us up too much and we are allowed to get into the office, we will mail them monthly. If we are not able to meet that, we will email you and advise. But as I said before, you're going to get your digital badge and your confirmation email. So if anyone asks for proof of that, you'll have that, and they can always also call our office. All right, now recertification. Once you're a CFRE, you do need to recertify every 3 years. I realize we're almost at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to be quick here. Marina, do we have the ability to go a few minutes over?
Absolutely, we do. And I just popped in the chat box as well for anyone that does need to jump off the call. We're recording the overtime as well, so you can always go back and catch what you missed afterwards. Thanks, Ashley.
Excellent. So the recertification is every 3 years. And the reason we have recertification is because you are demonstrating you have current fundraising knowledge. Personally, I have a master's of advertising from 2005. How old is that? How much has changed in the last 15 years in our world, right? Same thing with fundraising. Things move quickly. We need to continue to participate in our professional development. And that is why recertification is so important, because it's not, the CFRE is not just a snapshot of what you knew at one point in time. It's proof that you are continually learning. It's an online application. And the fee is $510 US of the regular price, or $408 if you're a member of a participating organization. Many people get this built into their next job contract. So if you're a CFRE and a year later you move to a new organization, when you're doing your negotiating, you may want to ask them, would you cover this? And we know that that is a very common practice, that people have their organization cover this, because it's a very reasonable fee, especially considering it's only once every 3 years. And there's no exam for recertification. Once you pass that exam, that's it. As long as you don't lapse, you're good to go. You will not have to take the CFRE exam again. I'm going to show you here the points requirements. These are really achievable. The professional practice assumes that you've worked 2.5 years in those 3 years. If you go on maternity leave for a year, medical leave, you're unemployed, just contact us and we'll work with you. We don't want anyone to feel like the recertification professional practice is something that's not flexible to modern life. Things happen, we get it. So contact us if for any reason you are not working 2.5 years out of that 3-year recertification cycle. Next steps, feel free to start your application. Like I said, there's no cost to start it. So even if you're chewing it over, you can go add this webinar, add any academic degrees, any learning that you've done recently. Track your education points as you earn them. If you go on a webinar next week, then throw it in your CFRE account straight after. People make a huge mistake of thinking, oh, it's a chilly day, I'm going to stay in and I'll work on my CFRE application and put my education in, and then lo and behold, they cannot remember what they attended. And speak to your boss about supporting your CFRE journey. They may want to offer to pay for books. They may want to give you the day off work before the exam for giving you a clear mind before you go into the test center. Your boss has a vested interest in you being the smartest person in the room, right? So don't be afraid to have that conversation with them. All right, and so with that, we are done. I know we're at 2 minutes past the hour. Marina, would we have time to ask 3 questions?
Absolutely. Yes, please go ahead with a short question period.
Okay.
Great. So a couple of common questions that came in are, is there an annual fee for this program?
There isn't. So there's the initial certification fee, and then there's that recertification fee every 3 years, but annually, no.
Perfect. How do you track funds raised if your fundraising role is more based around stewardship/cultivation?
Sure. Paul, would you like to tell us what you like to see there when you review apps?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not directly responsible for soliciting funds, if you're doing stewardship and prospect management and cultivation, you can, there are a couple ways to get points for performance, and that is listing projects. So you can list your, create projects around what you've done for your fundraising department, as well as any funds that were actually brought in as a result of your stewardship or cultivation. Those can be listed as part of your actual funds raised. So that was part of a team effort, and all people on a team can list those same funds. So there are definitely two ways, even if you're not making the direct solicitation yourself. And let's see. One more question. Can you sit for and write the exam prior to earning all of the points on the application?
That is not possible. We need to approve your application before you will be given the instructions on how to schedule your exam. So you will need to meet those points requirements before sitting the exam.
Great, thanks.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much to Charity Village, Dane and Paul and everybody. We really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley, Paul, Dane, for taking time out of your busy days to be here with us today. We do really appreciate it. I hope that this session has been helpful for folks to get a little bit more information about the program. I do want to remind everyone that we will follow up with you by email this afternoon with the webinar recording and the slide deck. If your questions did not get answered in the Q&A, you'll see there on the slide deck is some contact information so that you can reach out. You will get a PDF of the deck along with the recording. We will also send a short survey that will take less than 5 minutes to fill out. I hope that you'll complete that for us. You'll have an opportunity there to let us know if there are other topics you'd like to see covered in a future session. We'll be sure to share the feedback with the presenters as well. And for those of you who indicated on the registration form that you'd like to receive additional information on the CFRE program, you can watch for that. But if you did not check that box on the form but would like additional information, you can either reach out to the contact info on the slide on your screen, or you can leave your contact information in the final question of the survey form, and we will make sure that Ashley and Paul get that. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. Our next free webinar will be held on Thursday, September 24th. We will feature a product demonstration of our new video interviewing platform. We're going to walk you through all the services and explain how they can help you hire staff and recruit volunteers virtually. Please note that that session will be geared towards recruiting organizations as opposed to job seekers, volunteers, or candidates. We'll include a link in the email that we send later today in case you'd like to register. With that, thank you again, everyone, for taking part in today's webinar. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.